Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another video on the channel. And guys, if you'd seen my post, I had posted a couple pictures about all these figures. Well, some of them, not all of them. And I'd asked you if there was any that piqued your interest. Now, one suggestion that I received was that I do a haul video. And as you can see on the table, there has been quite a few that have showed up, so I should be good for quite a while. Now, one thing that I do want to go ahead and mention is that some of this stuff was supposed to come out over the next few months instead of like all together at the same time. Basically, Hasbro kind of became like Desaurus and became the Emperor of Destruction to my wallet whenever they shipped everything within a short amount of time, which... yeah, I felt that one. And so anyway, we're going to go over some of the stuff that I've gotten recently. And if there's anything along the way that you guys want a video made over, like an official full-on review, in addition to what we're going to look at today, make sure to leave it down in the comments below. However, I am going to do one for Silverbolt. So, I mean, that was probably already given. And without further ado, let's jump into it with none other than our Sharkticons. Now, truth be told, my friend had given me this original Sharkticon, and you know, to have it alongside the Studio Series one, it is really kind of cool to see. I love the giant chromed out teeth on the Sharkticon. One thing on the new one that I did notice is that where his head is positioned in his mouth, his robot mode head looks like it kind of becomes like a little grinder tongue. So not only are you going to have the teeth ripping you apart, but the tongue is going to be tearing you apart too. So that's awesome. Now, the other thing about this is I did not know that the original Sharkticon also came with a big, huge gun, which this guy's gun in robot mode, as we'll see here in a second, looks... I mean, it's absurdly huge for a guy like this, but I've seen guys that are doing reproductions of like 3D printing for this guy. So if I ever feel like it somewhere down the line, I might go ahead and do that. Now, anybody that might have had the original Sharkticon will notice this is not the original tail. This likewise is a 3D printed replacement. However, my friend said that in a comparison to the original piece that came with it, this one's a little more intimidating. So again, thank you to my friend for passing the Sharkticon along. I've really kind of been getting into the G1 guys lately, while at the same time it's helping me to have an appreciation for the actual updated versions of the characters. But it's cool to see them also just side by side as well. Now, let it never be said that they have never done a fat Transformer, because these boys are definitely, you can definitely feel the squat and kind of dumpy energy from them, but I mean, that's part of their charm, to be honest. Now, what's funny about the original Sharkticon is back in the day, they released him as a Decepticon because back in '86, you know, they had to assign a allegiance to either one of them, and I forgot to show this off in beast mode, but he does have the rub sign right there. And so, you know, I'm at least glad that the Studio Series acknowledges that he's not a Decepticon. He doesn't have that emblem anywhere on him, nor should he. Oh man, on the new boy, he does look really good with his blaster, his head just poking out of his beast mode mouth like that. I admire some of the detail in the top part of the mouth. That's really kind of cool. And again, his head sculpt, again, more animation accurate than you would expect this guy to be, wielding his tail mace. If you want him to go ahead and rock the fin, you can go ahead and have him doing that, although it has to go in there at an angle, so our boys look especially amazing. And if you wanted to kind of see what he looks like with more members of the Quintesson court, here he is with the Bailiff and the Alicon. And for modern interpretations of guys that were mainly just villains, you know, in portions of season 3 and for a sequence in the movie, for them to have like full-on figures now, I'm definitely finding it cool, because the whole Quintesson aesthetic with these guys is so different from what you see with standard Autobots and Decepticons. So anyway, just for one of the first guys that we were looking at, I just wanted to show you what he looked like with more members, again, of the Quintesson Army posse. And next we're moving on to a somewhat standard grade of Autobot with our Cybertronian Fall of Cybertron, well, War for Cybertron also, Sideswipe, and you know what? I definitely dig this. Some people might be bugged by the fact of him having an Autobot symbol back here. I'm not. But overall, I generally like the slick aesthetic, and it feels like Sideswipe. And thinking about it, I think Optimus is the only other Cybertronian Autobot from the games that I have, because I did not like Beer Belly Bumblebee or Beer Gut Cliffjumper. They just didn't really vibe with me. However, what I've been doing is I've been taking figures like this guy right here. So for guys like Wheeljack over here and Jazz and Bumblebee, I put the Optimus and I put the Sideswipe. And basically, at the end of the day, they're all Cybertronian versions of Autobots. And I'm like, you know what? For me, I will always consider the games and I will always follow their director or producer's original intent. This being the backstory for G1 as opposed to Prime, rather than Hasbro's. However, looking at our boy over here, you can see that those Energon rods that did come with Bumblebee finally have a purpose, although they do fit better when you don't have the giant blast shield on the vehicle. But overall, I dig having this guy. Which, one thing I do want to go ahead and point out is, look at his legs. Do you kind of notice the shape of this? It's more trapezoidal instead of a straight box shape. And this is how the legs and everything are supposed to go. Yeah, especially with this robot mode just kind of peeking out there on the bottom. But yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not a straight box shape. It kind of tapers outward towards the very back side of it. And I mean, from this mode, you wouldn't ever guess, but it is there, and that's to accommodate the back door on this guy, which when we fall down the back, you can see that we have got Bumblebee in there. And so when you take the blast shield away like that, you can clearly see through all of Wheeljack's windows that, I mean, like literally, there's the front part of Bumblebee, which, you know what that basically makes the Cybertronian version of Wheeljack? It basically makes Wheeljack a pretender shell for Bumblebee at this point. But I do like how you can kind of see him through there and stuff. And one thing is, you can't slide Bumblebee in there with his gun attached to the top, but because there's this little gap that goes down into the inside of Wheeljack's vehicle mode, I just kind of slipped Bumblebee's gun in through that little slot, and so it holds everything and it works perfectly. I also like the little blades that he comes with. I dig those. And yeah, I mean, initially I did like how his arms formed the front of the vehicle, but now, like, kind of looking back at the cartoon and kind of seeing it now here in person, it's not as bad as I initially thought either. But whenever we go ahead and open him fully up, you can see that this is basically the interior. There's not a whole lot going on here because, again, there was probably a lot of engineering designed to just accommodate him. Even though we do see an inside shot in the cartoon, I'm not upset that it doesn't have that. But that's basically the inside of Wheeljack's vehicle mode. And for anybody that has wondered, this is how you have to fold up Bumblebee in order for him to fit inside of there. So whenever you want to go ahead and convert the blast shield to the stretch of Cybertronian road, like it mentions in the instructions, basically what you can do is you can fold it back this way and it will pop off. You can kind of see a little bit how the track is. It's got a little bit of a notch right here, whereas this other edge is all raised a little bit. So again, you just kind of fold it back like that and it'll pop off. And then basically you'll just kind of flip it around over here to this side, plug it in like that, do the same for this. And now you have a stretch of Cybertronian road. And as you can see here, it does on the bottom of Wheeljack, it has 3 little areas that it rests on, these 2 little legs, and then this one part. And there you can go. You can have him driving around on a blue stretch of Cybertronian road, which is funny because, so as you can see here with our guy Thundercracker chasing him, to Mark's credit, one of the designers, he did try to do this with his Instagram, but the dude had a Earthbound Seeker and everybody was like, dude, come on, you needed a Tetrajet. So here's what it kind of should look like. I did watch that scene again, and they were using the Cybertronian models for both Skywarp and Thundercracker. So if you wanted to somewhat recreate that in plastic form, and you happen to have both these guys, well, here's how it could look. However, if you did wonder how him and that one from the Autobot 5-pack happened to stack up to each other, you can kind of see here the, ooh, knock that off. But you know what? It's just kind of cool to see the past and current version of Wheeljack. And while we've got him on the table, I do want to go ahead and mention that, yeah, this is very, very lackluster compared to his original Earthrise version. However, I think I briefly glanced at Toyhax's labels for this guy, and I think it does a wonderful job of adding the detail that his vehicle mode at the very least needs. His robot mode, we'll kind of see how it looks later on. Now this boy right here kind of feels like Studio Series, or well, the Gamer Edition anyway, is getting back on track with these guys, because he looks really good. The only thing that maybe I'm not crazy about is down here is the super hollowness of the foot. But basically once you move from the bottoms of his feet up, I mean, the boy looks sick. Now, one thing about his gun is, as you did see, he can hold it, but it's basically by the peg for where it plugs into his vehicle mode. So one thing that all these guys can do to match the game is you pull off their arm and go ahead and attach the cannon. And there you go. Now you have your boy being able to blast it. Now, he did have some sort of similar aesthetic to this. It was a little bit more cleaner in the game, which you would expect. But if, for instance, you don't like that actually back there, guess what? It's on a 5mm port, and you can literally just detach it and keep it off to the side, and then you can have it looking a little bit closer to the original Sideswipe sort of silhouette. But I just love the head sculpt on this guy, having the correct chest, and I mean, this does feel like the character it's supposed to be. Like I said, this is meant to be a pre-Earth version of G1 Sideswipe, no matter what Hasbro says. And I think, yeah, it looks good. And then when you go ahead and pull in his fellow Cybertronian of Wheeljack, you can see that the boy, definitely he's somewhat in scale with the deluxe guy, even though he's a Voyager. Now, one thing about Wheeljack is the fact that, yes, he is not clean in his robot mode whatsoever. You can see how the legs are just literally, it seems Unicron inspired with the level of panel folding on the legs. I mean, not that insane, but you get what I'm talking about. And then the roof for his entire vehicle mode is basically just folded in half up on his back, and it kind of plugs into notches that are cut out of his traditional wings that he has, which, I mean, those are just completely overshadowed by the mass of this boy. I mean, look at his arms. So if you go ahead and convert the blast shield back into its normal configuration, you'll see that it has these kind of, well, not notches, but slots right here. And you can see that on Wheeljack, he has pegs right here and right here. So you just line that up. And they say it's kind of like glider wings, but you guys know me. I love boys with giant flared out wings. And I kind of like to think of this as maybe it is a invention of Wheeljack's that allows him to be able to fly and stuff, which that would be kind of cool. Now, this is the Autobots 5-pack Wheeljack, and yes, you are probably noticing that he has had some upgrades applied to them. Most of them are on the back side, and as you can kind of see here, these were actually color-coded for the Earthrise Wheeljack, which, as you can tell, was a kind of a grayish, dirty white. But I figured that pretty much from the front side, you're never going to see them. Plus, his wings should technically kind of be that color, so I think it's fine. And also the additional rocket shoulder launcher thingy, because his was just not that impressive for either version, which I did want to bring this out. The one thing that is not third party is this gun, which I do appreciate them giving those to some of these characters in the 5-pack, because you know what it reminds me of is that actually, if you remember from the Red Cog video, he had all these assortment of weapons that you could give figures. So it's kind of giving me hearkening back to those vibes. But the one thing I did want to go ahead and point out is I wonder if this gun was originally meant to come with Wheeljack, because when you look at the back of the rocket launcher, and this is the same for the Earthrise version, it has that circular notch with the one below it cut out. And if you notice the shape of Wheeljack's gun, I thought, well, is it kind of supposed to slide over it? And it does, but it doesn't plug in there securely at all. It just kind of falls off. But for these 3 Autobots right here, I think probably my favorite vehicle mode out of all of them is Wheeljack with his Cybertronian truck mode, if that's what it is, or his van mode. And then I like Sideswipe's robot mode just because it's got that young, edgy aesthetic. And definitely I'm glad to have him joining Optimus on the shelf that him and Wheeljack will be joining shortly. So, which of these guys is the Studio Series and which of these guys is the dude from the 5-pack? Well, technically both should apply to the guy on the right, although, as you can obviously tell, the one on the left is the Studio Series version. And the one thing that I definitely dig the brighter color scheme as far as like the deco goes, because the Autobot symbol stands out, the reds and the blues. I do like how it's a little bit more color pop to it. But the one downside is, as many people know, this boy used clear plastic, and you can kind of see there on the top, that bit has cracked. Even his windshield right down the middle has also cracked. Now, with this guy having more opaque plastic, you don't have to worry about it. Plus, also on the back fender flares, you can see how he has that little bit of deco, digging that. And we've seen this sort of thing before, because when you pull in boys like Cliffjumper and Cup, we've seen the animation accurate windows before. So definitely it helps this guy to fall a little bit more in line with dudes like these. Now, to the Studio Series credit, it pretty much does everything it needed to. Again, like we mentioned before, you can see the detail over his fender flares, the gray is swapped out for the silvers, but pretty much the other deco, aside from color changes, like maybe the blue is darker over here than the 5-pack, and we already discussed the hood deco differences. The visor is a little bit lighter on this guy, whereas you can see on the 5-pack guy, it's actually a little bit darker. So, I mean, like, the details are nearly identical. Jazz, for the most part, is pretty much everything you would hope him to be. He's just a tiny bit more improved than the Studio Series version. Now, as you guys can see, we are looking at our vain boy Sunstreaker, and let me go ahead and detach that because that was just the store's weapon, because there's no other place on this guy. And look at how much superiority he has over his original Earthrise version. The hits of silvers and the grays and how the yellows all match up. That is astounding. And plus, I'm a sucker for the cartoon accurate windows. Now, what is surprising on this guy, well, probably not because he is so vain, is the fact that he does retain the silver spoiler weapon, which is excellent. But even though some people have a deal with like 2 Autobot symbols on the car, I'm like, it's okay. It doesn't matter. And even something small, like this little gray bit down here on the bottom, oh man, that just looks so good. And I still dig how basically when they go to robot mode, this is supposed to be this part of the car, but it basically is fake out feet. That's something about this mold that I've always really enjoyed. But anyway, let's look at this vain boy in his robot mode. And so looking at both versions of Sunstreaker here, you can definitely tell that the box 5-pack guy does have a little bit more of an orange tint to him, but it's still definitely in the yellow family as far as colors go. Now, one thing that I am absolutely glad that he came with was a blaster, which they said they based it off of a gun he had in the animation, which is cool because on the original guy, all he came with was the detachable spoiler, which, I mean, this guy still comes with. And so to have one that feels like it goes a little bit more with him, and for him to come with it, yeah, that's awesome. Now, I did go ahead and attach Wheeljack's rocket launcher over here because I think it looks sick as like a wrist-mounted launcher, especially with how they did the splash of silver on the forearms. It ties in a little bit better. But the other thing that I definitely like about this is you can see over here how the bottom part, they didn't fill in the part behind the legs, whereas on the 5-pack, they made this feel a lot more cohesive. And having the animation gray as opposed to what I'm feeling is probably the toy accurate black, it just feels visually more appealing. And like, I never had an original Sunstreaker toy, which, you know, the molding for this thing is in line with the cartoon, yes. But I feel that maybe when they released this version, it was meant to kind of, you know, evoke those that grew up with the original toy, because he had hard blacks on the original in what I'm assuming are generally these areas. So to have it be the cartoon guy instead of the toy accurate guy, I'm definitely enjoying the newer version that I have. And that's just again because it's more cohesive, whereas this one doesn't have as much of that sort of feel. Now this one's kind of interesting because we got to see this guy be number 10 on the list last year, and that's basically because I just wanted him to be this. And now to actually have it, yeah, he definitely supplants Detritus as my Jeep boy. But, you know, I like Jeeps, so I like them both still. And the good thing about Detritus is he can be either a good guy or a bad guy, whichever direction you want to lean in. But definitely here in vehicle mode, I think that Hound just sells it better in the official Jeep Army green that the boy rocked. Plus, I still love, I mean, just, yeah, knowing that it's finally here. You know, because whenever I mentioned this guy in the top 10, I said that, you know, Hound's figure disappeared into the ether somewhere, and then it showed up in this 5-pack, and I'm like, I was kind of miffed initially. I'm like, well, that's kind of scummy. But you know what? After seeing some of the improvements we've looked at with the other boys, it doesn't sting as much, and it really just kind of allows me to enjoy Hound for being the boy that he is. And I figured, what the heck, we'll just go ahead and pull his G1 mold out as well. And I mean, like we see this thing, definitely they're sharing the same deco because this is meant to, you know, reference his cartoon, well, technically his movie look. And this is supposed to be him, you know, in the cartoon. So I definitely like how they are very similar. And if I have a whole Jeep shelf now, they'll look good together. But I can foresee something happening with this mold of Hound. I think one day the original colors that this mold rocked, they'll probably do a toy accurate version of Hound, because you know that they like to have 3 uses of a mold. This is not, now that's not true for every mold they ever produce, but for general, if they can squeeze about 3 color schemes onto a single mold, then they're gonna do that. And so I think the only thing that is left is them to do the, you know, original 1980s toy deco on this mold, and then the circuit will then be complete. So what look at a Hound would be complete without at least comparing him to the Siege boy? And don't get me wrong, for the entire time that I had this guy, I mean, he has served the purpose that he was supposed to. There is, and if you like the Siege version better than the animation one, hey, that's totally valid. Everybody feels the way they do about it. And for me, well, I'm definitely going to go with the boy on the left. For the day and age that I originally got this guy, it was cool to have an official, awesome looking Hound, because that Thrilling 31 didn't quite do it for me. So when this boy came along, I was like, well, he's not exactly what I'd hoped. You know, now we do, and I can really appreciate this one for what it is, despite the fact that he's going to replace him on the shelf. And so here you can see our boy is finally in his robot mode. Outside of probably everybody that got the Masterpiece version, I didn't personally, because I was hoping for this guy. And to have that finally realized is so, so awesome. And I mean, his Siege boy over here does definitely kill it on the detail compared to him, but I mean, this was meant to be stylized like this as opposed to the layout of a cartoon from 1984. However, if you wanted your Hound to have a toy accurate rifle like the original boy over here, and your Siege dude is just kind of chilling off somewhere in a box, well, I guess you could give it to him like that. And I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but whenever they do that toy redeco, that's probably what they're going to do, is they'll probably just take the Siege rifle gun from that guy and give it to this dude. So, I mean, really, am I disappointed now that it's finally here? No, not at all. I mean, it basically ticks every box that I want it to do.
Hop in, Spike. I'm gonna take you for the ride of your life. Belt up and hang on.
Okay, so what can I say about this guy that I haven't said probably to nauseum about the other 4 boys in the set? What I ran out of things. Plus Trailbreaker, I mean, cool. I'm glad to have him in the set. You know, I was pretty happy with this dude. I mean, I dig the 1970s pattern on his side, but and yeah, he does have it more than this guy. And to be honest, I kind of actually do like the black deco a little bit more, but that's just me. Pick your lane with these guys. I have nothing against Trailbreaker. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, because pretty much everything, you know, that I've said about the other guys could apply to this dude. What you see, yeah, that's what's different, basically. So anyway, that's us going through the 5-pack. We've still got a few boys left to go through. Well, actually, there's one girl in here, isn't there? Yeah, there is. So anyway, that's Trailbreaker. Now we move on to our boy Gears. And I will say this, that personally, I'm not all too convinced about his vehicle mode. One thing that I did kind of find cool was the way that they make the wheels disappear. Is Mark said that basically it gives it a hover mode for his truck, like very Back to the Future DeLorean-esque. And like he posted pictures of it floating on a stand on his Instagram. And I'm like, okay, I don't think I'll ever be doing that with this boy. I mean, most of the time he's going to be in robot mode anyway. But overall, yeah, so definitely not a strong start for vehicle mode, if I'm going to be honest. So the interesting thing about this guy that everybody probably knows by this point is that he does have the chest detailing from that one episode, which he was turned nice. Another thing they did mention is that if you have the core class Soundwave, you could potentially, if you wanted an accessory like it, pretend it's his chip or whatever that makes him grumpy again, you could use this. I personally think it's a little too big, and plus, you know, I'd be afraid of losing this. That's why it stays in my core class Soundwave most of the time. But it is there. Another thing is on the back of his head, the original way that the original toy transformed is this was part of his hood. As you can see, it does have the M for the Mysterians line that his original toy came from. But you can definitely see that our boy is rocking his huge wide head. And then, I mean, as far as robot mode goes, I think the detailing is excellent. He'll fit in with all the other mini-bots. You know, each time we get another mini-bot, I keep asking the question, where is Sea Spray? Because I want my boy Sea Spray. Because him and Beachcomber, like growing up with the G2 guys, they were my favorites. Oh man, if we got like a G2 redo of Beachcomber, that would be absolutely amazing. I'd be down with it. You know, even if it wasn't like chromed out. But then again, Hasbro's kind of been like waffling back and forth on their position, whether they're going to do chroming or not. And anyway, who knows? Even if it was just a metallic painted Beachcomber, I'd be down. But as far as Gears goes himself, he's scaled appropriately. And yeah, he's just a nice little guy to have in the collection now. Now we dip into the realm of a much older figure, and like I've said many times, guys, but like whenever the original Robots in Disguise came out in 2001, I was on board with it. And even though I was like 13, I was still down with the Transformers. And let me tell you, I never had the blue iteration of Sideburn. Like for me, you know, we've seen the repaint and slight retool of Shadow Striker, which, you know what, she's a good and decent figure, but she doesn't really do it for me in vehicle mode, even with this boy's deco, you know, basically slapped on top. Because this guy, to be honest, Sideburn's a little bit snake bit from the day that he came out, because this is a licensed Dodge Viper. You can see that here they even had to, it's kind of hard to see if it will focus on that, but basically on the hood, that little tiny emblem is the Dodge Viper deal, and Hasbro would have to pay licensing to use this basic vehicle mode again. And so they've got Shadow Striker with her Cyberverse car mode, and they thought, oh, that'll be good enough, and clearly it is not. Now, I never had the blue iteration of Sideburn. This is the red powered up version, hence why he's got the gold wheels and the gold bits on his engine block and everything, and even that nice little symbol right there. I love that. And this boy in vehicle mode is very, very clean. He rolls real well. And I had sold the original one that I had back in the day, but this is a recent eBay purchase. And the guy had everything with it, including like the tech specs and the instructions. And like, I got it for like 20 bucks. And I'm like, for a figure like this, that's not bad. That's as complete and as in good a shape as it is. Yeah, I definitely like Sideburn. And I definitely like him more than Hotshot and Bumblebee. Now, for those of you that have never seen probably the original mold, this is pretty much what you get. Now, on his back, his actual engine cover and doors are supposed to be like this, straight up and down. But, you know me, because basically his engine hood became like wings, I always love to kind of flare out the doors a little bit more. I dig how the gold and the silvers look together. I love the gold gun. Again, like we mentioned, the Autobot symbol right there on his forearm. The head sculpt does leave a little bit to be desired, but it looks like the new one actually nails that a lot better. And he always kind of had this shoulder pauldron with that is basically his front bumper with the car shield. And yeah, this is the original missile launcher gun that Shadow Striker does try to replicate it with her gun. So if we go ahead and pull her in here, you can see that. And I just kind of use it as forearm armor on her. So if you go ahead and plug in the deal right there. See, the blast effects never seem to stick though on that one. So basically that's what she's referencing right there. Now, the other thing that they kind of merge together is both of the weapons so that it also becomes the drag knife weapon, which he has over here. And what I've always liked about hers, and what I'm kind of looking forward to on Sideswipe, or Sideburn, I should say, is, see, I had this blade effect right here from the X-Men crossover that they did, and I'm like, man, with her gun as kind of the hilt, that looks pretty sick as a sword weapon. So anyway, if you go ahead, you can actually take, because it has the two handles there, so if you go ahead and flip it around like that, now he's holding his knife weapon, which kind of looks a little minuscule in comparison to Shadow Striker. But anyway, Sideburn has been a guy that I've really, as of late, been wanting to get back in the collection, especially after I saw how you know, in vehicle mode, it doesn't look great as the original. In robot mode, obviously Shadow Striker's mold, which was meant to be his from the get-go, is a lot cleaner and it looks really good. So basically I'm going to go ahead and get the blue version of him from Legacy just so I have a blue Sideburn. But, you know, this guy will still be my Premier Edition version. Let me tell you, this version of Starscream, I did not realize how minuscule the wings were, considering that I remember how big the original wings were on this guy. I'm kind of hoping that somebody 3D prints some nicer, bigger wings that I could just pop on in place, because that does kind of bug me a little bit. However, what does not bug me at all is the amazing range of posability that this Starscream has that the original Voyager mold did not. This guy, pretty much his posability is this. Like, that's it. Maybe a little bit in the legs, but his arms are pretty much blocks. And that's something that the new Starscream has tons of emotion and expression. And for me, they do pop off quite a bit. Plus the fact that his cyber key can actually plug into the gun. If you guys saw one of our previous top 10 lists over the years, Dirge, it came with its gun. It's cool to finally have that referenced in the new boy. And, you know, just the blades on the arms, and just this guy absolutely kills it in no matter what mode he's in. And I mean, just the fact that he's so slick in a lot of the things that he can do. I am just enamored with Starscream, to be honest. And here you can see our sick boy rocking his jet mode. What I love about it with these modern jet formers is that usually you can apply a blast effect to them in the back, and that is something that I really, really enjoy. And on this guy, he has where you can actually stick his robot mode rifle here over the top of it. And we'll come back to that here in just a second, but I just wanted to show you how close he is to the original figure with Dirge over here, because Dirge is like the complete version of this mold that I have. Thrust is not. So, man, that'd be really kind of cool just to have these two guys, and if I get like another stand and have them like make it look like Starscream's farther away, because obviously he's a lot smaller than the original mold, but this just kind of looks sick from where I'm looking at it from behind the camera and everything. Now, the other thing about the rifle is on Dirge, you can kind of see down here, his actually on the original plugged into the bottom, and you would have the missile sticking out a little bit, you know, about the same length as the nose cone. Well, on Starscream, the interesting thing is that they actually designed it to be able to be actually utilized down here on the bottom like the original. And the way that it connected both up on top and on bottom is, if you can kind of see in the bottom of it, it has these notches. You can see here these tiny little tabs. So basically you just put the gun in what would be upside down, you plug it into both the tabs, and you close these bits of the leg back over. And if you want to, now you can have it incorporated into the bottom of the jet. And I just thought that was really kind of cool that they implemented two ways for you to utilize the cannon. So if you wanted it bold as brass on top, you can do that because of the tabs here in the fins. Or if you want to go toy accurate, you can do that too. And the last thing I want to go ahead and mention on Starscream is not only can you store his cyber key on his rifle, but it's meant to plug in right here. And it works both in robot and jet mode, as you would expect. And to be honest, it stays in there pretty solid and secure. So the detailing on the key itself is very minimal, but it does definitely harken back to the older cyber keys from the original Cybertron era. Which, speaking of that, we're going to move on to a guy that is another eBay edition. But the thing about him is, while this is basically Cybertron Landmine, they recolored him and re-released him in the 2007 movie line as Grindcore. And it was really kind of a silly name. But the reason I bought this guy is because whenever they had previously recolored this mold as a pre-Earth version of Rhinox back in 2006, I thought that that was kind of a really cool alt mode for Rhinox. It kind of makes sense. And so this guy, while he's not exactly colored like that John Deere version of Rhinox, he has the signature green that I feel is a little bit more in line with Rhinox. He has some of those, also the signature browns. And I mean, it's just really a good mold overall. And even the face, maybe at a stretch, you can maybe kind of see a little bit of Rhinox. It's a bygone era that we will never have missile launchers again, but even just something as niche as that harkens back to some good core memories that I have with this figure. And what's cool about this figure is that once you get everything where you need to, including the missile launcher on the back, because what heavy construction equipment doesn't have a giant cannon sticking out the back, is the actual shovel arm is still useless, or the big old shovel on this thing is still useful. And what I kind of dig about it is even like the level of detail of the scrapes and the scratches and everything on it. Well, I don't like it on Siege figures. For this guy, it makes sense because he's mostly clean. So yeah, so definitely this guy is another fun addition. And yeah, who would have thought that all these years later I would actually like Cybertron figures? What a shock, right? So here we have old Bird Dog, as Rat Trap used to call Silverbolt. And for the most part, I think as a modern update of this guy, I'm still kind of getting used to some of the changes in aesthetic because, probably unsurprisingly, I have the original Silverbolt. And the thing about his wings is they have this gray to gradual kind of, it's very muted kind of bronze before it fades into the black tips. And I kind of feel that on the original, it kind of had a little bit more of a shimmer, a little bit more of a vibrant bronze color. And the other thing is I kind of felt like the legs on this original Silverbolt are a little bit more in proportion for beast mode, because this guy's arms, his forearms, they just feel incredibly long. And I mean, it does work better for robot mode, and especially giving him like his actual height compared to like ones like Black Arachne and stuff. Now, granted, he has a lot more detailing of his own unique origin as opposed to what you see with the original Silverbolt over here. However, whenever we put Silverbolt in this frame, you know what this right here reminds me of? Is not so much Silverbolt, but a artwork with his recolor, that of Windrazor. And yeah, I thought it was just kind of funny that even this figure can evoke a BotCon image in my mind. One of the things I remember in the show is that he actually had his wings kind of down like this, whenever he was just standing there in beast mode. And I'm like, you ain't getting that with this Silverbolt. His wings are just big hunks of plastic because of the gimmick it has to incorporate, which we'll look at here in a bit. Silverbolt is not one of my most favorite Beast Wars characters, but the boy is not bad either. And so here's Silverbolt posing in a way that the old guy could never even hope, although yes, he does have to have his giant tail butt out of the way. But it is just so cool to see Silverbolt in such a dynamic pose. Like he's getting ready to throw his missile swords, quick strike or somebody on the ground. And the old guy, that's a little bit beyond his capability. You can see this is pretty much all Silverbolt has. Now, I do like a lot more of the official like detailing for the new guy. Earlier figures do what they need to in the time they come out. But whenever we get updated guys like Silverbolt here, I mean, there really is no comparison. And you can kind of see it like this. And yeah, I'm just really down to kind of see what he looks like with all the Maximals. This boy's going to get his full-on review. That's why I'm not going full in-depth with this dude. But yeah, Silverbolt is one of my favorite recent acquisitions. And we finally move on to the final subheading of our collection today, our recent acquisitions, and it is none other than Inferno and Airazor. And let me tell you, this and the Dinobot Tarantulas set we're going to look at next does not disappoint. Oh boy. Let's save Airazor for next, shall we? Let's go ahead and start fully on with Inferno. And if you guys have seen this channel, you know that I bought this gun right here as a third-party deal because it's, you know, it's basically the gun he had to show. Well, this Inferno, it did come with the booster gun like the original, but what they've done with the booster gun on this guy is you can see that they've colored it to basically try and make it like his actual gun. But as you've also seen, they included a blue iteration, and this is supposed to be his booster, which basically means the Takara version of Inferno can have both his booster gun as his actual weapon and then use the other one as a legit booster. Now, if you will notice, this boy's mandibles are a little bit of a darker variation than the one you see over here. The eyes are still blue, but when we get down to the back, you can see that that detailing has been taken off of the Takara version because it wasn't show accurate. But he does have the show accurate abdomen pattern, which was missing on the original boy. And the legs are much more noticeable brown on the Takara version, where over here on the Hasbro version, it's much more somewhere between a brown and a charcoal color. But other than that, I mean, pretty much his beast mode is the same. Oh man, this is gonna be so awesome to see these guys in robot mode. Look at this Predacon colony of ants that I've already got. This ain't even including the original Scavenger or the original Inferno here, but oh boy, let me tell you. Whew, this boy. Yeah, it's just, I mean, unless you see it in person, it's hard to tell you how much of a richer tone that the original Inferno does not have, well, that this original Legacy Inferno does not have in comparison to the new guy. And then when you pull in both these guys, the Legacy version versus the premium version, really it's just a lot of darker but more saturated tones on the new and premium version of Inferno, and he just looks good. The other thing that I've noticed is, look at the legs on this guy. They're black on the standard Legacy version, and they're brown to now match his Beast Mode legs, which is more accurate. Plus, you can see some of the paint that on the new guy that the original one was missing on the side of the leg. Now, also, the other thing is, look at these amazing head sculpts. This guy is rocking more black details around his horns. This guy matching more brown ones again. And plus, that little cheeky bit of detail popping over the back end of his propeller butt. I love it. So let's go ahead and see how this looks. You can see here the standard Legacy guy with the red booster, whereas the blue one does tie in a little bit better with this character right here. Now, that being said, I was kind of disappointed because on the original Inferno, the actual propellers were silver and just these inner parts were painted blue. And I was kind of shocked because on the Gen Selects version of Antagony, you can see that on her propellers, they colored the circles yellow and left them silver. So I was kind of like, well, why did they not do that? Isn't this guy supposed to be like perfect, you know? But needless to say that, yes, he will be, like many of these updates, replacing the standard Legacy Inferno. So what I've been doing with a lot of Kingdom and Legacy figures is I've been putting the old ones in the packaging that the premium guys came in and then just kind of putting them in the closet while these better versions sit out on the shelf. Now, Inferno is a weird case because we actually discussed this in Antagony's video, is I like Antagony with the Scavenger head and drills because the black ties together a lot better. I could actually do this instead. Now, while I don't believe that the Scavenger head and drills look as good on Inferno's body, that would enable me to have Antagony as who she's supposed to be, the actual Inferno, and then this iteration of Scavenger. So, I don't know. I may keep it like this, I may not, but you know what? Definitely this mold has not disappointed me. So let's see if Airazor can actually top this guy. And here are both of our Airazors, and yeah, there is quite a bit of difference between these girls right here. You can definitely see that this really desaturated, almost grayish brown on the girl has now been replaced by a much more lively brown. The tips of the wings actually have color on them, whereas, you know, Airazor kind of had like that little bit of dirty, dingy detailing, and the new Airazor's wings, they're just so clean. Man, I'm digging this deeper brown on the girl. Plus her feet, this is something that I did with a marker, and you can kind of see I didn't even do it all the way. But they went in with the detail and they colored her feet, which look excellent. The underside is giving me more show accurate vibes. So really that's all I have to say about her beast mode. Let's kind of see what she looks like in robot mode. Oh yes, the girl has definitely got the more color correct placement. And unlike those G1 guys that we were looking at earlier, they generally had the correct layout, but due to the cost and the molding and how they had to do things with Airazor, some of her colors got shifted around and were not quite right. And this is pretty much the proof. Because Airazor, I mean, she didn't have orange going all the way up her sides. This is more accurate right here. I mean, everything about it is just, yes. I mean, and even the golds on her missiles, I mean, maybe I'm just thinking a little bit too much into this, but they look a little bit more richer, just a tiny bit. I mean, oh yes, I think this mold definitely looks better in darker colors anyway. And to even emphasize the point further, here is the Beast Wars 2 Skywarp. Again, a bot in lighter colors, and between the three of these, the premium girl still takes the gold. And just to finally have an Airazor that looks like I remember her in the show, this is really striking at a part of me that, yeah, there's quite a bit of nostalgia, but I think just to have her looking the way she always should have, that definitely says something about this mold being stellar from the moment it was created, and it just took until now for it to be fully realized. So here we come to the second to last figure that we're going to look at in comparison to himself, that being Dinobot. Now, one of the things I do have to go ahead and throw as a disclaimer out there is that this Dinobot, the standard Kingdom one, did not come with his claws like this. This is again me just taking a silver Sharpie and coloring his claws. Whereas on this guy, they kind of went with the strange decision to paint his claws gold. But, okay, He's a little bit flashy. Plus, the other thing that maybe you are noticing is this is a light chocolate versus a dark chocolate situation. But you know what? Hey, whatever. It's nice, kind of cool variation. Some of his robot mode bits as the premium edition because it does definitely favor the robot mode over the beast mode. You can definitely see some of the stuff that will come back into play later being a little more prominent, whereas on the original Kingdom Dinobot, it's a little more disguised. But other than that, he's still the same silly raptor with the giant long straight tail, which, I mean, for running poses, that's perfect. However, let's see how these guys stack up to each other in robot mode. Okay guys, I did not realize the level of detail in this mold until I saw it done up in Takara. So, first thing is, you can see over here on the standard Dinobot that these upper thighs, you know, they are just brown, right? Well, as you can see over here, aside from all the excellent detailing where it's black here on the thighs, in the show that actually is more of a chrome texture, and I was kind of thinking, well, why couldn't they have just done silver instead of black? So, again, that's just one small thing they got wrong. It doesn't really matter because, I mean, look at the level of detailing in this leg. I mean, it is astounding the stuff that they picked out on the areas of the feet, just the thighs, the lower legs. I mean, it is astounding the stuff that I never realized was on this mold because in just a more solid color, that's something that, I mean, wow, that is really, really kind of cool to now see it finally picked out. And wow, this dude is a lot more flashy. The other thing that blew me away is when you look at this, you may be thinking, oh, is this another T-Rex situation where they colored his lips? Well, actually not, because on this and the original Kingdom mold, if you can kind of see real close, his mouth actually is recessed and that white area is only inside where his mouth is because he has silver teeth in the show. So again, that's not his lips. And then when I really looked at it, I'm like, oh no, it's just his teeth. And I'm like, that is really kind of cool. The other thing that Dinobot's really infamous for is his spinning tail weapon, which on the Kingdom guy, just standard molding color, but you can see that Takara went to town and filled in the inside of the tail weapon. That's great. Now, another thing that they messed up on, and I don't know why everybody gets this, because it's actually a chrome sword, not purple, but even here on the Takara one, that's a little bit more shiny, it's still not the right color. I'm like, guys, can you just give us the right colored sword? I mean, even the Masterpiece got it wrong. And one more thing on our boy Dinobot over here is, do you know what they included with him? And this is not something you see with the instructions commonly. They went ahead and added the golden disc, which, I mean, it makes sense thematically with him since he's the one that you see with the golden disc most of the time, aside from Megatron. And he did destroy this disc specifically. But all the other guys, they didn't have really cool stuff with their instructions. But for Tarantulas and Dinobot, they got yet another iteration of a disc that I already have, but it's a cool little inclusion nonetheless. However, that aside, I think that Tarantulas has quite the hill to climb because this Dinobot is just absolutely stellar and there is really no arguing with it. I mean, the boy is legitly awesome. So if I asked you to pick out the premium version from the standard legacy version, which Tarantulas would you say? Would you look at this one and say, oh, well, he has gold, maybe he's the premium edition? If you said that, you would be wrong, because it is actually this guy over here. And everything that you see that is gold on the legacy version, they actually went animation accurate on the premium version and did just straight yellow. Not only that design in the back, but as you can also see up here, this guy over here, Legacy, this guy, Premium Edition. Plus another thing that you might notice is the metallic paint on his little mouth area right here, and what will become his robot mode chest. And this guy over here, he's just the standard plastic color. So one of the things that astounds me is that's really all that's different in this guy's beast mode. Everything else is pretty much on par with the original Legacy release. So let's go ahead and see what these boys do in the robot modes. Well, the Premium Edition Tarantulas did not climb that hill to overcome Dinobot's awesome upgrade in paint. Now, a couple other things that we discussed before. You know, he has the gold down here on his feet. It's a much more saturated yellow in comparison. The other thing is this guy has thigh paint on the Premium where the original Legacy guy did not. The only other thing is it's hard to tell on camera and even in person. It's just a shade difference. Like the Legacy guy, he has like a slightly darker tint, whereas the new Premium deal is a little bit more silver, true silver, whereas this has kind of got like a little bit of a blue to it, if I had to guess. Bluish gray. So anyway, I mean, you know, we already addressed the fact that his chest is a little bit of a metallic, and I think on this it looks really good. I mean, obviously it's going to look better than just the standard plastic, but that's really the only differences on this guy. Now, all of the Premium figures don't have their faction logos on them, like the original Standard Kingdom and or Legacy releases. So I don't know if I'll necessarily feel like I need to, because in the show they weren't that super prominent unless you're like Megatron or, you know, literally had it in his forehead. I don't think they need it. I know they're Predacons, and I mean, if you go to the extent of buying the Premium editions, you probably are A, a fan of Beast Wars, and B, you know that as well. So it's like, okay, cool. I don't mind it missing, to be honest. And that's pretty much it for the haul, guys. Alright, so who are the top 5 figures out of this entire long haul? And number 5 is our boy, Sideburn. Oh yeah, of course it is. My fondness for R.I.D. shining through. And number 4 on our list is none other than Cybertron Starscream. And of course it would be. Such a fun guy, and of course it would be, because our boy's a definite worthy update of that original design. Number 3 on our list is Grindcore. Yeah, with the Rhinox vibes, the pre-Earth Rhinox vibes this guy's putting off, I definitely think it's easy to say why it is. And our number 2 pick is Premium Edition Inferno, because of course it would be. And man, that boy, I think out of all 4 Premium Edition figures, that one is an absolute favorite, so probably no surprise there. And our number 1 pick for the haul is that of Silverbolt. And I tell you, there are so many reasons why this boy soars to the top of the list. And you know what? I kind of always have thought of him as a tool, but he's just really noble to his core until they run him in beast machines. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the look at this entire haul. I know it's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's not exactly what we normally do, but there were a lot of robots, and you can see why I feel financially wrecked now. We might have to cool it for the rest of the year, I'm afraid. Anyway, with that being said, guys, we'll see you next time in another review.
Your pulleys don't squeak. Your squeaking's not the problem. It's your squawking.